Every 8 hours, a woman is murdered by her husband or boyfriend. In our country, every day, every single day, 15 million children witness an act of domestic violence. So then, with contrite hearts, we begin our penitential service with the silent procession of the cross. Please stand.
My client met her husband back in her home country. It could have been Asia, it could have been Africa, it could have been South America, Central America, the Pacific. She met him and she fell in love, and he promised to bring her to the United States. He promised her a home. He told her that he had a good job and that he could provide for her. He met her family. He made promises to her family. And like many of us have done, we've fallen in love and we take the leap. And we get married, and sometimes that means we move across countries, we move across oceans for the person that we love. When she arrived at the airport, she thought she was going to be taken to the marital home as he had promised, but she ended up sleeping on a mattress on the floor of his friend's house, and she had to scrub the room so it would be habitable. And she was transported from the airport to her new marital dwelling in the back of a pickup truck. Now, she's a smart woman. She's received degrees. She has a loving family. And she spent her first few nights crying and thinking, I need to go home. This is not what I signed up for. But there were several conflicting emotions, one of which, but I love this person, and I can see the good in this person. And maybe we can make it work, because I've always been that woman. I've always been the woman to take care of myself, to not ask for help, to help myself. That's the way that I was raised. The other conflicting emotion that she feels is the shame. The shame of calling her parents, the shame of calling her family, and telling them that he lied. He lied to her, he lied to all of them. So she sticks it out. And over time, she realizes that she's no more than a portal for babies. He demands sex, and she'll give it to him. She's a housekeeper. She's also sent to work 2 jobs. She works 2 jobs during her first pregnancy. And when she calls him, because she's feeling morning sickness, he tells her to wait, and she ends up waiting at the bus stop for a few hours in the rain, and her coworker gives her a ride home. I think for most of us, we have the thought that why would you stay in that situation? Why would you do that? Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior used to establish power and control over another person through fear, intimidation, often including the threat of violence, or violence itself. If we look at statistics, and indeed if I look at my own client base, violence is very intentional. This is not men who are having a hard time, who get drunk or use drugs and lose control. Domestic violence is intentional. It's an intentional pattern of behavior to establish power and control over another human being. Many of my clients are not necessarily beaten every day. You only have to beat someone once or twice to teach them the lesson that if you don't obey me, if you don't follow my rules, this will happen again. And I think it's safe to say for many of us, we wouldn't always have the courage to stand up to that or the ability to do so, particularly if you've just traveled across the oceans, across the seas, and have no one. She's isolated. She has no family or friends. She may not speak English, or she may have limited English proficiency. She's not allowed out of the house. If she's allowed out of the house, she has to go to work. If she goes to work, she has to respond to text messages within 5 minutes. He picks her up, he'll drop her off. He controls every part of her life. The paycheck comes to him. He goes with her to the supermarket to buy food. For us, for those, I should say, for those of you who aren't in the field, we might think or look for things like, does she have a bruise on her face? But again, domestic violence is the intentional use of intimidation and fear to establish power and control. Batterers are very smart. They'll hit her on her head so that you can't see the bruises under her hair. They'll strike her in places that clothes will cover. Yes, sometimes there's visible bruises, but most of the time the bruises are invisible. But there are warning signs that each of us can look for. Does the partner check her phone, check her social media? Does he exhibit signs of extreme jealousy or insecurity? Is there constant belittling or put-downs? Does he have an explosive temper? Is she isolated from family or friends? Is there constant false accusations? The most popular being accusations that she herself is cheating on him. Erratic mood swings, physically inflicting pain, possessiveness, telling someone what to do, and repeatedly pressuring someone for sex. These are just some of the warning signs of an abusive relationship that if you yourself find yourself in, or you might see a friend, particularly the isolation. Going back to why would she stay? Why would she endure that? Why would an intelligent woman capable of holding down her own job, a mother of young children, why would she stay in such a situation? There's several barriers that my clients face to leaving. If you saw the video before the silent procession of the cross, you saw a young woman trying to escape with her infant child in a car seat as her batterer is chasing her out of the house, hitting her head with punches, and she's trying to protect her infant child. The truth is, as my father says, that 3 women die every day. The most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is leaving. The most dangerous time is the 24 hours after she leaves, the 24 hours after she files a temporary restraining order or goes to a shelter, because he is out to get her, because she broke his rules. He controls everything she says, does, and everywhere she goes. And as soon as she violates those rules, you better believe there's going to be punishment. And unfortunately, sometimes that punishment is death. As an attorney, when I counsel clients to get a restraining order, I also have to prepare them for their own death. A will, and advanced health care directive, power of attorney. There's also other barriers to leaving, one of which I mentioned was shame, cultural, religion. Does your priest tell you to stick it out? Does your priest tell you that you took marital vows to death do you part? Does your culture tell you that? Does your family tell you that? Many immigrant victims of abuse are terrified of deportation, particularly if they have children in the United States. Their abusers tell them, well, if you call the cops, they're going to come and take your children away and you'll be deported. So what choice is she given? Is she going to abandon her children to the man who beats her, or is she going to stay to protect them? It's not easy leaving. For most women, it takes an average 7 attempts to finally escape their batterer. And as depressing, as scaring, as overwhelming as it may sound, there's a lot of things that every one of us can do. I certainly would not stand here and counsel you to directly intervene in a violent situation or confront the abuser. But if you know a family or friend who is a victim, the most important thing you can do is listen. The most important thing you can do is listen with no judgment and be supportive whether she stays or whether she goes. You can encourage them to participate in activities outside of the home, whether that's family activities or with friends. You can help her develop a safety plan. If she does need to go, where can she go? How can she do it safely? Can she text or call you a code word that will let you know she's enacting her plan? If you're her neighbor, can she turn on the back porch light as a signal to tell you to call the police? Encourage her to talk to people who are here to help, like myself, like the advocates and workers at Domestic Violence Action Center. There are community resources to help her. It's hard doing the work that I do, and that's one of the common questions that I get. How do you do it day in and day out? Just as the stories that I share with you now are grim and horrific, so is the stories of hope and survival. These are domestic violence survivors. They leave their batterers. They find their own financial stability. They create loving and safe homes for their children despite all these odds and surviving death. So beyond the points that I've given you to think about, if you yourself come across a victim or survivor of domestic violence, I'm going to end by asking you to take a pledge. I'm going to ask you to take a personal pledge and a collective pledge. I want you to learn about the issues and talk openly about them. I want to ask you to support survivors in some of the ways that I've detailed, and I'm sure you'll come up with some creative solutions yourself. I want you to speak out, and this is particularly important when you're around the Thanksgiving or Christmas table and you hear someone make a comment like, well, she must have done something to aggravate him. That's your opportunity to speak out in a loving way and correct a statement. Even if it's correcting a statement with a simple fact, like 3 women die a day, those women who died didn't do anything to deserve death. And I want to ask you, St. Mary's, to make a collective pledge. Beyond what we can do as individuals, I want us to think about what we can do as a church community to help survivors. A woman leaving might need a safe place to go, might need a shelter over her head where she can figure things out, a safe place to go where she has time to find something more stable. One of the programs that we have that we're going to improve upon is the Thursdays outreach to the homeless. But that's another example, is what can we do as St. Mary's to not just reach out to the homeless, but reach out to homeless survivors of domestic violence. Because another scary fact is over 1/3 of homeless families and children are survivors of abuse, and many women end up on the streets fleeing their abuse. So I want to thank you for your time, and I want to hold you accountable to the pledges that I'm asking you to make. And I'm always here as a resource for anyone at St. Mary's, any one of you who is an abuse victim, any one of you who's dealing with a family or friend who you think might be a victim. I am here as your resource in St. Mary's to offer my services. Thank you.